I'm Emma from Outside the Bubble, and today I am joined with Dan from Ramsack, and we are going to be discussing finding your tribe. So, finding your tribe.
Finding your tribe.
What does it mean to you?
So, I guess in the context of leadership and running a business, finding your tribe is, well, I suppose it's working with the people that elevate you, isn't it? We all go to work every day wanting to enjoy ourselves, and let's be honest, running a business can be really hard. There's lots of sometimes there's lots of challenges, but it's the people that for most of us, I think you want to work with people that you like, that you respect. But it's more than that, isn't it? Your tribe. It's the people that lift you. It's the people that make you the best version of yourself.
And they make or break the workday.
Absolutely.
There's been so many times I've had the worst day ever, and my colleagues have just done something so simple that makes me think, it's so worth doing this. Absolutely.
But it's more than that as well, I think, because it's not just the I want to work with nice people today, but it's because that's fairly operational.
Yeah.
But strategically, when you're building your business, it's I want to be on a journey with people that I really want to be on a journey with. I lead our business. People look at you thinking you've got the answers. I am painfully aware of my weaknesses. I absolutely know the things that I think I'm all right at, but definitely I know the things that I know I'm really not very skilled at. And that's part of it too, isn't it? It's a tribe of people that have got each other's back, where I guess you can lift each other up, where you bring your own best bits to the group.
Exactly. And you said something that was really interesting, in the sense that you know where your good bits are, you know where your bad bits are. Do you share that? Because some leaders take a really interesting line of, oh no, I want to be good at everything and I'm not going to show my weaknesses or vulnerabilities. But actually, I think sometimes when you actually do share with what you're rubbish at, people respect that a whole lot more, and then actually move into a space where they're like, I can support you so much better because I will take this from you.
Absolutely. And it's sincerity, isn't it? And for me, there's a big difference between, I guess, a politician style of leadership. I have to stand in front of the camera and I have to show you that I've absolutely got this and I'm a safe pair of hands. That might be fine for a press conference or for a short-term engagement. But actually, if your business is a journey, none of us can put on a show forever. So it comes down to sincerity and I guess vulnerability. And you can't be vulnerable with people that you don't trust. But if you trust people, then you can be vulnerable.
Yep, absolutely.
And therefore, I don't think you can be true. I don't think other people can be truly vulnerable with you if you haven't been able to say, I'm really rubbish at this. Because it's not even up for debate, is it? That we all have strengths and weaknesses. That's
It's not. I've done some very interesting interviews where people have none.
But or the classic interview question, like my weakness is my perfectionism.
I care too much.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just work too hard for you. The reality is, all of the psychological profiling, whatever you look at, whether it's Myers-Briggs, whether it's Belbin, whether whatever DISC profiling, it's all based on the fact that if you've got a strength, you've got an allowable weakness.
Exactly.
All of it is based on the same theory. It's very rare that you find somebody, for example, that can be great at ideas and big picture thinking and be brilliant at being in the weeds of the detail. So you shouldn't be ashamed to admit those weaknesses, but you have to have an element of psychological safety. And maybe that is part of being a tribe as well, that psychological safety.
Yeah, no, I think that I completely agree with you. I mean, I have been in businesses where you can sense a lack of psychological safety, and then it runs through the culture of the business, and you can see them doing nothing because they don't trust anything, and nothing is, I'm not going to put my head above the parapet, I'm not going to use any initiative, I'm not going to, because it just lacks that like you say, psychological safety. And that's where I think finding your tribe is really important. And also, it speaks to being authentic as a leader and being, I suppose, confident enough in your own abilities and who you are to say, do you know what, this is who I am. Come on my journey or don't come on my journey. But there's no room for indecision. Like, I know in terms of my own style, I'm really not good with people that sit on the fence. I like people that have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've been recruiting, I'm always looking for someone that has an opinion, not that necessarily shares mine, but has one. So those kind of, wallflower types, they're just not my people. But I know that about myself and I know what I'm looking for. And I think that comes into it. As you see lots of leaders start businesses, but they don't really understand who they are or what they're about when you're thinking about actually leading a business. Because although you might start off with a really great entrepreneurial idea, or I'm going to give the world this product or service, sometimes I think, or what I see is entrepreneurs not necessarily thinking about the types of people that they need to come with them to support them.
Yeah.
And I think it's understanding your style and being okay and comfortable with that. And being able to describe it, and not necessarily in an academic style, this is my type of leadership, just, this is what I stand for, these are my values.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think you just said something really important as well, that when you're interviewing, you want somebody that's got an opinion and not necessarily your opinion.
Precisely.
And there is I think finding your tribe, I think you and I have very similar opinions on this, and we'd say that finding your tribe is really important. But that doesn't mean cloning yourself.
No, it certainly doesn't.
There's a really important piece around diversity of thought.
Yes.
We talk a lot about diversity in workplaces at the moment, and but specifically thinking about diversity of thought. You don't want clones of yourself. You don't want people that are just going to go, yes, Emma, your idea is wonderful. You want that person that can go, Emma, you've got this absolutely wrong. Yes. And this is why.
That happens quite a lot.
But again, that takes safety. So that takes vulnerability and all that kind of stuff. But there's a real danger that you could, I suppose it's the when you're building your tribe, my view on it is there has to be a core set of values. So I think of everything as like a relationship, right? The relationship you have at home with your other half is no different really to the relationships that you're forming with friendship groups or work colleagues or whatever.
I think HR might have.
Well, no, there are some differences, I should clarify. But in terms of, you often, it's the classic opposites attract statement, isn't it? You often look at, a husband and wife, and you'd go, well, they're quite different people. They've got different strengths. They've got different weaknesses. However, there has to be a core set of shared values at the bottom. At the bottom layer, you've got to go, well, we want to do things slightly differently, but fundamentally, these are some lines that we know either of us would never cross. And there's got to be a destination in mind that is shared, whether that's in work, whether that's what we're trying to build in the business, if that's in your personal relationship, it's like, what are we working to achieve? What does our second half of our life look like, or the third quarter, the final quarter of our life, whatever it might be. And I think that's true in this tribe thing, isn't it? You want difference, but what is it that has to be in common as well?
And I think that's a really good question, because I think it comes down to your values as an individual. Because I think you're right. If you think about the relationships you have, like the relationship I have with my husband, our values are completely aligned. However, we have differences in opinions on all sorts of things, and those differences get discussed, they get talked about, we debate them. You have different perspectives, or even from you've watched a film and you see two different films between you, or you go and pick a piece of art for the front room and you both like it, but for completely different reasons. They're the things I'm interested in finding in people that I then work with. So we can all see this organizational problem. We're coming together and people have got perspectives that you haven't seen. And for me, as a value, I find that attractive. So when it comes to values, I guess, and what I'm looking for myself is I really like I said, people with opinions. I like people that have grit and are a bit tenacious. And I suppose don't mind rocking the apple cart. You know, they're just natural punks, I guess. You know, and anarchists. They're the people I love, because I recognise that in me. So when you look at organisational structures, I have like two opinions of them. Like, one, you need an organisational structure because you need to be able to communicate to your organisation, this is how we are packed and ordered. However, that organisational structure doesn't necessarily dictate where people are and aren't allowed to have opinions and ideas and how to collaborate. And so I get very tetchy when I meet organisations that have this very autocratic way of communicating with their people or generating ideas, or this sense that strategy is set at the top and it's filtered down. I like it a little bit more flat. You know, when people say to me, you know, what's, you know, the best tip you could give a first-time leader or a first-time director, it's always actually go and chat to the people that probably are on the lowest level of that organisational chart, that are doing the mundane and the everyday, because that is how your business actually operates, not what you think at the top.
Yes.
And it's about having, I suppose, the strength, the vulnerability, the authenticity to turn around and say to your board, we're not a power keg here. You know, we are here to, like you say, go on that journey, achieve, but we achieve together and collectively. So I guess they're the values I'm looking for in people that love having ideas or seeing things and feeling safe that they can come and say, did you know this is going on in the business, without someone going, you can't go and tell the boss all the things that they're doing wrong. You know, my favourite experience was I worked with this lady, and incredibly anxious lady, very, very, wouldn't say boo to a goose, but was technically brilliant. And one day she came up to me and she said, you've got this wrong. And I was like, sit down, sit down. And she was like, talk to me, tell me, where has it all gone wrong? And she then gave me this beautiful series of arguments of things I'd missed. And I was like, do you know what? You have saved my bacon royally, and I can't thank you enough. Thank you for having, you know, the courage and the bravery to be able to say this, because I know this has not been easy for you. And that was the start of what's turned into a magical relationship. You know, we're still really good friends, although we don't work together. And I often think about, if I have the ability of a leader to take somebody that is quite shy, quite anxious, quite nervous, and be able to tell me I've done it wrong, then that to me is great leadership right there.
And that's a really good example of
not patting myself on the back too much.
Well done, great leader. But that's a great example right there of exactly what we were just talking about, isn't it? Because this is somebody that is different to you. So she's not a part of your tribe because you would naturally have been drawn to her at a party. But she's part of your tribe because actually, in order to come and challenge you and tell you that you've done something wrong, she actually cares.
Yeah.
You know, she cares about the output or the outcome. And but you've created that sense of psychological safety that she could come and, you know, knock on your office door and say, Emma, you've got it wrong.
Yeah.
And she's done so in her way, which was probably to have gathered the facts. You know, right? You often find that with sort of more introspective people, which it sounds like she might have been.
She absolutely is. I think if we did insight, she'd be blue and green.
Yeah, exactly. You know? So she's had to go away and gather the facts and do the thinking, and it's probably the evidence. And I'm like on insights, I'm a yellow, and no. And I you know, I make most of my decisions based on my gut, and that sometimes means you miss huge amounts of relevant background information. So you have to surround yourself with those people that can go and do that. And but what you didn't do was put her on the spot to come up with that considered thinking, you know, without the chance to consider it, right?
And I think that's where things like insights really do help. Like if you as a collective business have done something like that, it gives you a language to be able to talk about your strengths and weaknesses together. So for me, there's like a cat's whisker between red and blue. Yeah. And literally it's almost neck and neck. So what that means is I'm very direct, I'm very assertive, but I can take information and process it very, very quickly, come to a decision and move on. And my green and yellow skills aren't necessarily that prevalent. But I know I need those greens and yellows around me when I'm not doing them, because when I go off in my mad little plant and monitor evaluator, that's just mixing insights and Belbin together for shits and giggles, I'm in my happy place. I love thinking and analysing, but for some people, I've just rushed off.
Yes.
And being able to identify that in myself and being able to say, actually, I need people that will pull me out of the rabbit hole or pull me away from the front in order to let other people to catch up, because it's those people that are actually spotting all the things that I'm not considering. And I think it takes, and again, it comes back down to that, I'm okay knowing what my weaknesses are. I'm okay sharing them, because I need people that are better than me. Because that is how you build great teams. When you see people that want to be the big I am, it's like, no. Employ people that are cleverer than you. It's specialisms you need.
Absolutely. Like, we all talk about having that sort of, that complex of, that sort of imposter syndrome, don't we? Yeah. And I don't think I've ever met a great leader that doesn't say that he or she has imposter syndrome. I think if you don't think, oh my goodness,
maybe you shouldn't be doing this,
then I think you're leading with supreme arrogance. If you think I've got this, I know it all, I'm perfect, then
I've met them.
But and I bet you've met them as their businesses are failing at some point.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality, and I think if you really think that you know it all, then you know absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. I was just thinking as we were talking, like, it's changed for us as a business. So when I joined Ramsack, there were 4 people in the firm. So our tribe was the 4 of us. We've now got 120 people in the firm. And I think there's lots of elements of tribe that still exist within that. I think the business is different. Obviously, it's different, but it is more diverse than perhaps it was at the beginning of our journey. I still think that overall there is a tribe. I still think that whilst there's, we've got, quite a wide range of age groups. We've got people that, are from different cultural backgrounds, people doing very different roles. We're an IT business, so there's some very deeply technical people as well as the more traditional business roles like marketing or sales, whatever. So you've got a lot of difference and diversity of thought, but I think we still recruit to a core set of values. So I would still think that most people at Ramsack would describe the Ramsack tribe and the Ramsack values. But I suppose as the MD of that business, I look more to my direct leadership team now as being the people where I need, the people around my table effectively on a weekly basis as being the ones. So yes, you want to create, and we can talk about this till the cows come home probably. You want to create a culture where everybody can interact, but there's a real importance in that top team, isn't there?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if your top team are not aligned, it's just never going to work, because essentially what you're building is an ecosystem. And for ecosystems to thrive, there just has to be a undercurrent of understanding.
Yes.
And I think that's where that piece about your values being fundamental, and being different from character types, plays such an important role. And recruitment becomes, I suppose, in your organisation, ever so more important.
Absolutely.
Because I would assume that, if somebody has misrecruited, for example, and just put a bum on a seat and not cared, there's a great possibility that that person will stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And when they do, it's really apparent to the rest of the tribe. And what's really interesting, there's been a couple of occasions where I've recruited wrong. I've just missed.
We've all done that. We've all done it.
And within a couple of weeks, you can just see it.
Yes.
It's as clear as day, and they don't necessarily have done anything wrong. You just know it doesn't work.
But I tell you what, your team have seen it before you have.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And my senior leadership team were very quick to tell me I'd got it wrong. And I was like, yeah, I've even seen this. Don't worry.
Yeah. But it can be, but I think the junior, the peers see it first, right? And it, as you say, and it can be really destabilizing.
Yeah.
And that's where I suppose, having built your tribe, or having chosen to work with your tribe, I actually think that almost becomes your number one job as the leader. You have to be fiercely protective of that tribe, because if you start to, and listen, that recruitment mistake, I think we've all made.
I think everyone.
Yeah.
You have to, though, actually, because you don't learn the value of tribe unless you've misrecruited.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then if you don't take action to protect it, then you can really destabilize it really quickly. So that kind of like, mama bear, papa bear type approach to this is my tribe. This is the group of people that
exactly. I need to love it. I need to nurture it. I need to keep it on track.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
To fail to take action at your peril.
And I find it amazing where some people don't put that front and center of actually building a successful business, because it's amazing how many times I speak to business owners and their first port of call is always like, oh, it's always the customer. It's always the customer. And it's like,
no, it's not.
Really? Are you sure about that? Yes, I'm absolutely
you treat your staff like number one, because your staff are the people that I don't deliver to my customers on a day-to-day basis.
No.
We've grown the business to the point where I'm actually not involved in in every customer interaction. So it's my people, and don't look after you. If you don't believe that your people are your first priority. I think, however, that point about protecting the tribe and kicking the sick bird out of the nest, so to speak, for want of a less gruesome expression, that can get lost in an artificial belief that, but we built a lovely culture here, and we're lovely to people, and we're a great employer. And that can get lost with therefore I find it really hard to have a difficult conversation with somebody.
Do you know what? I think that's spot on. I think it's a great observation, the nuance of great culture versus where lovely, and that being misconstrued quite a lot, especially if that, I suppose the bigger your tribe gets, the more diluted the values feel, because obviously it's third generation by the time it gets to the shop floor.
Yeah.
And so what they see is loveliness, because actually what you've built is probably a very harmonious, cohesive environment. And that's lovely because people enjoy going to work. They enjoy the camaraderie of the people that they're working for. Everyone's on this mission. Isn't that lovely? And that gets misinterpreted for kindness. So actually when someone comes into the ecosystem and when it's very, very clear that they don't fit the ecosystem, they have to go. And then that's but that's really harsh and that's not what we do. And it's like, no.
And they have to go, they have to be challenged. But that's like, I love my children.
Yeah.
But it's helpful.
They'll be really happy when watching
this.
But
my, your job as a parent is to keep your children in line a little bit as well. Sometimes I have to have harsh conversations or honest conversations. You try not to kick them out of the nest, but the reality is, it is your job, and they thrive. And people are the same. People want feedback. People want to know how they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not cruel to give people negative feedback.
No.
So long as you give that feedback in the right way, actually, most people want to grow. Most people want to get better. Most people want to impress. And you don't do that without, if you live in an echo chamber of perfection, but also you owe it to the other people on the team that have to, if you've made the mistake, if you've recruited the wrong person and that person has come in and is being the arsehole, and, it's so disruptive to the rest of the team. I remember, I'd like to say we have a very good record of keeping people for a very long time in our business. But we do, but we've made the odd mistake. And the first one we did was, the first mistake we'd made was back at a time when we were about 10 people. And I think when you're a company of 10 people, you talk about it as the family.
Yes.
And it feels really, really personal.
Feels intimate, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And we had to it was the very first time I'd ever let anybody go. And I'd got really, really nervous. I bought a new suit for the occasion. Got really, really nervous because fundamentally I don't like conflict. I'm not brilliant at it. I am a bit of a people pleaser, I suppose. But I got really nervous twice. I got really nervous about having the conversation with the person that we were going to let go. But I was actually more nervous about going into the next room where the other 9 people were there to say, listen, I'm really, really sorry. You're going to hate me for this. So those weren't my words. But in my head, I was thinking, you're all going to hate me for this because I've just done the unthinkable. I just fired somebody. And actually, we went in,
And what happened?
and I was definitely more nervous about that bit than the first bit.
Yeah.
Sweaty palms, everything.
Yeah.
Went in and spoke to the team, and you know what they said?
Yeah.
They went,
well done.
"What took you so long?" Right? And that's always been my experience because the tribe know.
The tribe know. I mean, and I think everyone gets to that point, don't they, where they get up in their heads. You know, if you've got to let somebody go, that's, you know, you then start doing this bad press.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what's going to be said at the water cooler, and this is what's going to be passed between teams messages, and there's going to be a WhatsApp group all about this. And actually, there have been people, like, I had exactly the same experience where they're like, thank God for that.
Yes, absolutely.
And what I see quite a lot sometimes is actually people have lost good people because of bad people, because they won't challenge that.
Absolutely.
And, you know, when you point that out, no, people won't read it. And it's like, yes, because actually what you're doing, and I see this so much, it's just, you know, it actually frustrates me, is that you've got one like rock star person that does everything and can do everything. And then they carry all of these bad eggs because the person above them just doesn't have it in them to just go, do you know what? You're not very good. Off you go.
Yeah.
You know.
And at what point does that rock star think, I am not going to carry on carrying these people? So you lose the rock star.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to pay the rock star 3 salaries, even though they're doing 3 people's jobs.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah. It's really motivating for people, isn't it? To know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about this in our business all the time. You know, we publish a culture book. We actually, you know,
and it's a wonderful book.
It's actually like real core principle about the way we want to work. But it does, you know, and I'd like to say, like, because we're talking about, you know, the negative side of it, 99% of it is absolutely wonderful, because if you're really out there and you're overt and you talk about your culture, actually it's quite self-selecting.
Yes.
I think, you know, when somebody gets past their, well, our culture book is on our website, but if somebody gets past the initial screening of, we do all our recruitment in-house. So if they apply for a job and they get past that initial screening in order to be invited to a first chat with our people manager, they get sent the culture book.
Yeah.
And I think that's really self-selecting. Because some people will hate it.
I love your culture book. Reading it is just joyous because, like you say, I read it and I'm like, I want to work here. This sounds great. And I know there was a quote in it, and I think it's someone that's not with you anymore, but wrote, you know, what I love is, you know, the managing director walks into the kitchen singing Bob Marley songs. And it was just like, I want to work in a place where the managing director can do that and not feel self-conscious in front of his people whilst making a coffee and then doodling off. Like, oh, actually, that feels like a vibe I want to be part of.
And of course, some people will be absolutely put off by the culture book, and that's fine.
But that's brilliant because you're not our tribe.
No, exactly, and we're not yours, and that's okay. We're not, like, actually, it would be a worry. Our tribes would be homogenous and fake, wouldn't they, if they were all the same? And there are some people that will not buy, you know, the fluffiness of our culture book or whatever. And funnily enough, one of the comments we often get in, we do sort of 6-week reviews. You know, at the end of somebody's 6th week, they sit down with our people manager and we do a check-in, not on how they're doing, but on how we're doing.
Yes.
And one of the questions we ask is, because this is, like, you know, I'm a big believer that recruitment is a marketing exercise. So, you know, if you've won a new customer, you would sit down with that customer and go, what brought you to us? Where did you find us? You know, was it a Google lead? What did you think when you came on the webpage? Because you want to be able to replicate.
Yes.
You know, if I've done something in marketing that has brought a new customer to me, I'd be mad not to ask the customer why they chose me, because I want to be able to replicate that so that I can win more new customers.
Yeah.
Well, recruitment is the same. If you're not if you're not reviewing your own recruitment process at the point where someone's been with you long enough to know they can actually talk to you. So 6 weeks is the sort of the rough window that we choose. But we always say, is the job how we sold it?
Yes.
Like, is our recruitment process true? Because we want to sanity check that. And actually, funnily enough, the thing we often get is, I kind of read the culture book with a little bit of skepticism because I didn't think it could really be like that.
Yeah.
But yes, it is.
It's quite accurate, actually, yeah.
But that's interesting as well, because, and sorry, I wasn't trying to do a shameless plug of our culture book.
Oh, plug away.
But you've read the culture book because you just quoted it. We don't write it. We write the front page and we write the back page.
Yes, and everything it's just
all
quote.
Our staff. We ask our, and we do this every 2 years, and we ask our staff, what does it mean to work at Ramsat?
Yeah.
And that's it. We ask them one question, and it's warts and all. We don't even correct the typos. It's kind of, it's just in there in people's own words. I hadn't really thought about it until we were talking, but that is the tribe choosing the tribe, isn't it? That is the outward expression.
But it comes back down to you being authentic as a business. You're not trying to play at being something. This is who you fundamentally are. This is who we are. Take us or leave us.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a certain amount of braveness to be able to say to the market, actually, we're not trying to be all things to all men.
Absolutely. Because, goes back to the relationship profile stuff, doesn't it? Like, I could put a photo of, Brad Pitt on my dating profile, but when they meet me and they realise I'm a middle-aged bald man, they're going to quickly see through that. And it's the same. Like, I could say I could go to a marketing agency and get them to write my recruitment website for me. Why would I do that?
Exactly, because actually a question that's been kind of percolating away is, how do you feel when you walk into other offices, other businesses, and they've got their values plastered on the wall? Is that something that you find that is a joy or an ick for you?
I think it depends what those values are.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely fine to have a set of values published.
Yeah.
If they're real, if they're unique, and if they are truly reflective of what that tribe is all about. If the first word on the values list on the wall is honesty,
I knew you were going to say it.
then it's an ick. Because, nobody publishes a value that says, well, we like to be dishonest.
Do you know what? It'd be really refreshing though, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Liars, fraudulent, bad customer service.
Exactly. We were talking about politicians earlier. Let's not go there. But, so I think it depends. I think I don't have a problem with values on the wall if they're backed up. And I suppose if you read the values, in our case, if you looked at our values on the wall and then you read our Glassdoor reviews, or you read our, you looked at our staff exit rates, our attrition rate or whatever, and there's a massive disconnect, then it's meaningless, isn't it? But
it absolutely is.
And if it starts with honesty and success, oh come on, please.
I know some of them.
I want to be dishonest and unsuccessful, so I won't work here.
Is that? Oh, so that's the fraud out. Okay, right, next. Because for me personally, sometimes I find them quite dry. And like you say, it's that disconnect where they're these massive, big show and tell about them, and then you look around the office and people look miserable and glum, and you're like, well, this doesn't reconcile for me.
Isn't it interesting how when you walk into someone's office, you can feel the culture? Like, does that sound a little bit far-fetched?
No, not at all. I have the privilege of going into lots of businesses, and because of what I do, I get to snoop and be a nosy Rosie. So that's always great. And I can think of one client recently who literally was falling over themselves to tell me how happy everybody was. And this must have been the gloomiest, like it was dark. The office was genuinely dark, even with the lights on. And they had like these 6-foot dividers, and it was like a maze walking through the office. And then like, everyone's really happy to be here. I was like, you can't see anyone. Is this why they're happy? And, I just said, as some constructive feedback, you may want to think about the layout here, because this isn't giving me conducive vibes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think final note is office layouts have a real impact on values, and values have a real impact on layouts, I guess.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Perfect. And that concludes Building Your Tribe.